Once again, from the studios of UNO Television on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, consider this, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
In January, Mason Essie returned to Kansas City after receiving a heart and liver transplant at Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. This video from Mayo. Mason told us his life was saved by Americans years ago when he was allowed to come here as a political refugee from Togo, and saved again by his donor and medical team. But Mason and wife Christine worried about how they could afford the travel to Minnesota for his much-needed biopsies and other follow-up care.
Where can I find the money to do that? It is not possible.
Even the Greyhound, we don't have money to take the Greyhound either.
We knew of a group that might be able to help Mason. Angel Flight Central, based here in Kansas City, provides free flights for people to get medical care. Sure enough, after Mason filled out an online application,
Everything was very good, very quickly made.
Angel Flight found Mason and Christine an angel, a very experienced one. Ward Montgomery of Minnesota has flown for 58 years. For the last 17, he's given his time, talent, plane, and money for Angel Flights. Ward picked up the Essies at downtown airport after flying another Mayo patient back home to Olathe. The pilot says it's all about lifting others' burdens.
They've got their own set of troubles. They don't need more. And if I can help, I'm here.
The Essies so glad we connected them to Angel Flight.
Thank you for Force 4 News, who stood up.
They're so grateful to Ward and Angel Flight.
There's no word to thank them. Only God can take them.
The Essies winging their way to Mayo for care of Mason's new liver and heart, a heart full of gratitude.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Angel Flight Central. Joining us to talk more about it are Jim Hassenstab, Chairman and pilot for AFC, and Tom Belford, also a pilot. Thanks to the two of you for being here. Welcome.
Sure, thank you.
All right, Jim, we ended that piece with a heart full of gratitude. Tell us about the Masons in your life that you take under your wing as a pilot.
Well, I've been flying for Angel Flight Central for about 5 years now, and over that time I've flown many individuals, and probably the most memorable one is an individual, a lady from Little Rock, Arkansas. She had some breast cancer that the doctors in Little Rock just could not treat, and she found a doctor here in Omaha at UNMC that literally found a way to keep her alive and treat her cancer. And I have flown her from Little Rock up to Omaha probably 2 or 3 different times, and she literally is on the face of this earth because of Angel Flight Central, and it was just very gratifying to be able to fly her up here and bring her for treatment. So,
and these folks span quite an area. We do have a map that we want to put up for our viewers. And Jim, if you could just kind of tell us what we're looking at here.
Well, Angel Flight Central is based in Kansas City, but we cover 10 states, and so you can see the states on the graphic there. And Omaha is one of the key centers because of our medical facilities here. We fly a lot of folks into Omaha. And within our region, an awful lot of passengers we fly into the Mayo Clinic as well because it's in our region, and a lot of the passengers have medical needs that are treated at Mayo Clinic, and so we do a lot up there as well.
Folks are interested oftentimes in numbers, fast facts, that kind of help us understand the magnitude of what it is that you're doing here. If you had to put out some numbers for us, what's important for us to know?
Well, probably one of the most important things is every year Angel Flight Central coordinates about 2,600 flights for individuals, and so that's quite a number when you think about it. Just in July this past year, we flew 305 flights for different individuals going through their medical treatment, or in the summertime we also fly kids that have some kind of medical issue that keeps them from going to a regular camp, and we fly them to a special needs camp, and so we did quite a bit of that this summer, and we do every summer. So I think that's important. Across our region, we have about 375 pilots, and 17 of which are based here in Nebraska.
You keep saying we, right? The majority of this organization is run by volunteers.
It is.
So how on earth, you mentioned 375 pilots, it's one piece of the puzzle. How is
Right.
all of this then accomplished?
Well, like I said, it's based in Kansas City, and we have a small but very dedicated staff in Kansas City that does all the work when it comes to coordinating the flights, communicating with the passengers, making sure that we have a pilot who steps up and says, I'm going to take that particular mission. So they do all the work down there in Kansas City. And then across the region, we have the pilots that volunteer their time and their plane and all the costs associated with it to fly these passengers where they need to go.
Pilots like you and the gentleman to your right, Tom
Exactly.
Belford, also a volunteer with this organization. I'm curious, and I know we'll talk more about it as time goes on, but how were you introduced to Angel Flight Central, Tom, and what was it that really kind of roped you into the organization?
Well, I was at an air show up in Wisconsin. They had a booth there, and I just started talking to the staff that was manning the booth, and they told us about the good work that they do, and it just sounded interesting to me. And when I got back home after that air show, I looked them up again and made an application, and I've been flying with them for about 4 or 5 years now.
You make it sound so easy, Tom, and yet you have a life outside of Angel Flight Central. So how is it that you are able to, well, let's talk first of all, what do you do outside of being a volunteer pilot?
Well, my occupation here in Omaha is I'm the owner of the John A. Gentleman Mortuary, so I work for the funeral home, and I have a crazy life with that because I don't really have a regular schedule. But when time allows it, every day we get a letter or an email from the Kansas City office, and they'll give us a list of the flights that are available. A lot of the flights that I do are the last minute ones where they couldn't find somebody to pitch in, and where I can find that I have a free day, then I can take those flights. So I'm sort of a last minute pitch hit guy as far as taking the flights. It's hard for me to plan out, 2 weeks in advance. But I do 5, 6, 7 a year to help families, and it's just been fun. There's another aspect to it as a pilot too. Typically I wouldn't fly to certain cities, and this gets me into other communities that adds an element of fun to it too, in addition to helping people. So while I like to say it's all helping people, it's I sort of enjoy going to the different areas of the region. Typically our flights are about 2 hours in length, to maybe 2.5, 3 hours. If they're longer than that, then a lot of times we'll meet somebody at a halfway point and transfer the patients off to them, and they'll take them the rest of the way.
Okay, and we have a photograph that we want to put up for our viewers because I understand it was a team effort in getting this mother and son to where they needed to be. So tell us about this picture, you guys.
Well, this is a mother and a son, and the son needed some vascular surgery that wasn't available in his community, and so another pilot by the name of Doug Ingen, who's a friend, and I took this assignment, and we flew to their community and picked them up, and then this gentleman was going to Denver, so we flew both of them into McCook, and the picture is actually from the McCook airport, and that's the plane I fly. And we met the other pilot, who was from Colorado Springs, and that pilot flew this couple into, I shouldn't say couple, but family members, into Denver, Colorado, when he had his procedure. And then Jim, a day or two later, picked them up and flew them back to their community.
So how long have the two of you been pilots, and how is this working in with your interest in flying? I would imagine you're probably getting to do a little more of it than you would normally get to do,
I think,
and as Tom said, to places you wouldn't have otherwise been.
I think I've been flying since I got out of high school, so I've been flying a number of years. And I think most Angel Flight Central pilots really enjoy flying. It's really their passion, and it's a way that we can use something that we're passionate about to help others in need. And so we love doing it, and you really get a tremendous amount of satisfaction when you meet the passengers and find out a little bit about their story, and find out how important this is to them, that they just could not afford to make that travel on their own. Either financially they couldn't afford it, or in some cases maybe they couldn't stand the car trip or whatever, or the time away from work. And so there's a variety of reasons why the passengers need our services, but it just gives you a lot of satisfaction when you learn a little bit more about the passengers and why they're going and about their particular situation.
Okay, and Tom, how about you with your background as a pilot?
I've been flying for about, since 2001, and I've about 600 or 700 hours in the air. I just enjoy flying. There's something about taking off and landing and being able to be up in the sky. It's once you experience it, it's hard to explain, but it's just an enjoyment for me. So to be able to take that and to be able to help people at the same time, it really adds to it.
Pretty amazing stuff. We were talking before the taping, and you were joking a little bit. We saw Tom's plane, right? We were able to see that. Jim, tell us a little bit about your plane. It's only fair, right, that we talk about you too.
Well, pilots talk about their planes an awful lot, and Tom and I were actually joking a little bit. Tom said my plane's a little bit bigger, but we have a Piper Mirage, and it's a 6-place, pressurized, single engine, and it goes reasonably fast, and so it's a good plane for this type of flying that we do, and it allows me to maybe go a little bit further in some cases than some of the other pilots, and so it's really been a great plane to use for these missions.
Well, you both are very humble people. I think it's important to note that in addition to your talent and your time, you are also the ones funding these trips. Yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So this is stewardship at its absolute finest here. The fact that you would take time away from your regular jobs, your paid opportunities, your families, your friends, to go and do this, that's one piece, donate your plane and so forth, but the fact that you're actually funding the trips, and we don't need to go into it too much, but I just wanted to make sure that people understand that this is a stewardship effort. Tom?
It is. It's, the expense of flying the plane is on our back, and we don't receive any kind of funds for doing this. We basically get the hugs, and that pretty much takes care of it.
Yeah, and Jim was sharing earlier, Tom, maybe one of his most memorable stories. Do you have one that sticks out?
They're all unique, and they're all great stories. There are people that are struggling and hurting, and we go out there and we try and help them and get them to where they can get some help, so they won't be struggling or fighting a disease or something. And it's just personally, it's very satisfying.
Tom, I need to ask, because you are associated with the funeral industry, and you are seeing people most oftentimes who are coming into you in situations that are less than ideal. I'm sure that has played into, I don't want to assume, but helped you with this, right?
I can share their empathy a little bit, having worked with families that have had loss.
Yeah.
I never tell the people what I do. And other families I've flown know that I'm a funeral director. I don't know why, but I just don't say that. And I actually have another interest, and if I have to tell them I do something, I throw the other interest out.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just think that's an interesting tie, that you are there helping them through Angel Flight Central to live a quality life for as long as possible, and just wondering how your experiences towards the end of life.
I would twist it a different way and just say I'm a pilot that likes to help people, and I just happen to be in another business too. But that's how I approach it when I fly people. I don't want them to know I'm involved in the death industry, because I think some people might take it wrong, or might say, well, you're prospecting for business or something.
Oh gosh.
And that's that's the last thing I never want to do. So when I fly them, they think I'm in the hotel business.
Oh, they do. Well, I think what you're both doing is an absolute beautiful thing, and wanted to, as people are watching this program, it's important, I think, for us to note the criteria that people need to meet. We wish we could help everybody, right? But there are criteria that need to be met. So we're going to go ahead and put those up, and I'd like to have the two of you walk us through the criteria, if you would, please. We have 10 here, so.
Well, first of all, I mentioned our staff in Kansas City, and they're responsible for communicating with the passenger, who would apply either by making a phone call if they heard about us one way or another, or we do have a place on the internet where they can go and put in an application. And then our staff will go through with them and make sure that they go through every one of these and make sure they, first of all, have the financial assistance, the need for the financial assistance. And then they have to be able to get in and out of the plane. They cannot have a type of illness that requires them to have medical care. Oftentimes it's the pilot and the passenger only, and so there is no ability to give any medical care there. So those are some of the criteria that we want to make sure that they can do. And if they get through that process and the screening goes well, oftentimes there has to be a medical release maybe by their doctor, and then they are put onto the schedule. And as Tom mentioned, we get an email every night that tells us the missions that are available, and the pilots just pick and choose which one seems to fit their availability for time and dates, and that's how the missions get selected. And you then communicate with the passenger and tell them that you're the pilot, you're going to pick them up at a certain place at a certain time, and that's how the flights take place.
Wow, okay, so people watching the program, the first thing they want to do is what, Jim? If they're interested, they log onto a site, they make a phone call?
Probably the best thing to do is go to our website, which is angelflightcentral.org, and that site has all the information available to passengers who could potentially use our service, and we'll also tell them either if they want to make a phone call, they can call our office in Kansas City, or there is a place where they can put an application in online, and they can do that as well.
Okay, so once those applications are in and folks are being considered, again, talk in terms of numbers, so I've put my application in. What percentage of folks actually knowing what you have in terms of pilots and availability and so forth? That would be the first part of the question. And then what generally happens if people aren't accepted through this particular program? Is there a plan B that they can consider at that point?
Well, first of all, probably well over half of the individuals that contact us do eventually get into our system and are flown by our pilots. And those that are not, oftentimes we try and refer them to other social agencies in their particular city to try and get them the help that they can use. If unfortunately we cannot, for whatever reason, fly them. But of those that we do accept, probably 75 to 80% of the flights actually go off as planned. There are sometimes weather issues, or maybe an appointment was canceled, or we have plane maintenance issues that sometimes prevent a flight from happening, but most of the time they go off as planned.
Okay. And folks are notified how? Because, just thinking back to the story that we put up at the beginning, that's such a big deal for people to hear that kind of news, right? So they go through the process, they are selected, someone calls them, notifies them. Tell us about what that's like for these people.
They will get a phone call from one of our coordinators in our Kansas City office, and our coordinators become very familiar with these individuals, and to the point where there's friendships are even formed because they're talking to them frequently, they're coordinating flights maybe frequently with them, and they get to know them pretty well just by doing that process with them. And so that's how they're notified. They will be called by one of our coordinators and put on the schedule, and then once the pilot decides that they can take that particular mission, he is the one who then calls the passenger and says, I'm your pilot, I'm going to fly you next Wednesday, let's meet at this particular FBO at the airport at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'll get you to where you need to go. And so that's pretty much how it works.
That is very cool. All right, so Tom, heart full of gratitude, that's how the story at the top of the program ended. I think we think in terms of what they're getting out of all of this, and we've alluded to it a bit, I think, in this interview, but what is the biggest reward, Tom, for you in doing this?
Well, it's just personal satisfaction. I think just helping other people, I enjoy that. So I think that if you reached out and helped somebody, you're going to be benefited, and that's really what happens to me when I fly these people. There's a lot of gratitude that comes from them, and there's a hug or two, and that's about what we end up with.
Right, and you guys were saying, what, 5 or 6 flights a year? Is that true for you, Tom?
I do about 5 or 6. Yeah.
Okay.
I do about the same, maybe a little bit more. I try and do one a month if I can. So that's about how many I do a year.
Let's talk a little bit more about the position of pilot. You know, I would imagine we have a lot of folks out there who like to fly planes, but there would be criteria I would think that would need to be met here as well. So talk a little bit about the pilot in terms of what the expectations would be, review processes and so forth, because even though you are donating everything, there has to be certain things that are
Sure.
obviously considered. So Tom, do you want to talk
Well,
about
we
your
want to make sure
experience?
everybody understands that there's a safe pilot flying them, and so we have the group has rules for joining the organization. They want you to have a minimum of 500 hours of experience, and then not only that, they want you to be comfortable in the plane that you're going to be flying these people in. So, for example, if you just bought a plane yesterday, we don't want you flying these people in that plane until you've had, 24 to 50 hours of experience in that plane. So there are some standards that we ask you to follow through with, but once you've had about 500 hours of experience, you've been up there and you know what to expect and things. It's a pretty good standard. We don't want somebody going up there just got their license yesterday.
Right. Well, and not only that, but in listening to you, thinking about this whole notion that you're taking people who are sick and who are needing help, in addition to you, the pilot, and the family, or maybe the individual and a spouse, who else is on the plane with you? Is there a medical person? I mean, how does that look for us?
Normally not. Normally it's the passenger and maybe one of their family members. You can at times have what we call a mission assistant, someone else that maybe a friend, a fellow pilot. Actually, my wife flies with me on occasion, and she helps the passengers to make sure they're comfortable, and while I'm doing the flying, she can take care of them better than I could. And so that's really the only people that are on the plane, but many times it could just be the pilot and the passenger that you're flying. But one thing, I'll back to what you had asked about as far as the pilot criteria. I'm currently chairman of the board of Angel Flight Central down in Kansas City, and we take safety very seriously. And so along with the criteria that Tom mentioned, we also have a safety committee that meets periodically during the year, and we're constantly reviewing procedures and communication out to our pilots to make sure that number one, they're qualified, and then number two, that they're adhering to safe practices in all cases. And so that's very important to us, and we spend a lot of time and effort to make sure that that's the case.
What is the biggest concern, Jim? Because when I asked the question about anybody else up there with you, we don't know what's going to happen on the ground in a car, right? Let alone up in the air in a plane like that. So I'm just trying to think mentally of that individual. Could be a great pilot, could be great with people, but if something were to happen in the air that would need to be addressed, is that something in your training that you're talking with folks about too?
And oftentimes, the best thing to do is find the nearest airport and land as quickly as you can, and then if that person is having some type of medical issue, to get them help as quickly as possible. And so that's generally what our training tells us that we should do.
Okay, 375 pilots. How often do you all get together, or do you? Have you ever met each other? Are you all in a room together at any point?
Strange enough, we did just recently. Jim had a little gathering for this area in Omaha, in this area, and I don't know, we must have had about 75, 80 people there, and so it's sort of a wonderful gathering to get to meet them, because we never really get to meet the people in our region. I might meet a guy from Colorado Springs as I meet him, but halfway across. But he did a nice job for us up here by throwing this little gathering, and we got a little more esprit de corps here, and things are, I think, always, they're always exciting here. They with the training, you have to be retrained every year, or we have to go through a safety program every year. So everybody has to sort of requalify. That's one thing. But I find the most important thing is communication with the people you're taking with you. And you do a number of things to get the plane off the ground, and so I'm always talking to the people I'm with and telling them what I'm going to do right before I do it. And so then right before we take off, I sort of explain to them what we're going to be doing as we take off, how high we're going to go, and why we're going to go that high. We may want to go higher to get up above the clouds. We may want to stay low to stay under the clouds. The winds might be better lower or higher. So I sort of explain all that to them and go through everything rather, well, probably more than I should, but they know exactly what's going to happen, hopefully before it happens. Now there might be a bump in the air that we don't know about, but And then the same with landing. I tell them exactly what's going to happen. My plane has a lot of bells that go off to signal that I'm within 1,000 feet of a certain target altitude. So I explain to them before that happens, that in a few moments we're going to hear a little buzz and not to be worried. And then when we get up to the top, it buzzes again, let me know I'm there. So some of the technically advanced airplanes have this on there. If you weren't aware of it, you might be a little startled or maybe even scared. So with the people I take, they're very well informed about what's going to happen before it happens. And then we go through the whole process before we land to let them know what's going to happen. I actually show them how we're going to approach the airport and land at the airport, and what to expect at the landing. So.
Wow, I love that, because again, in listening to you, some of these folks have never been on a plane before, let alone a small, for anyone who's ever flown in one of those smaller planes, it can be a little bit jolting, right? I mean, it can be a little bit scary. It's much different than, your commercial airlines. And so the fact that you're offering that to them, I'm sure calms fears that are already heightened because of the situation they're in.
Well, we hope it does. There's some people you'll never calm down, but it's their first time, and they have a right to be a little nervous until they experience what's going on. Typically, most of my flights I've taken have been relatively smooth. I haven't had any bad turbulence at all with any of the families I've served. So.
Wow. Jim, in just the minute or so that we have remaining, what aren't we asking that's important to know about Angel Flight Central?
Well, I think as chairman of the board, I want to recognize our staff in Kansas City. I've gotten the opportunity, obviously, to get to know them very well, and we have a tremendous executive director. His name is Don Semple, and a very small office, only 4 individuals in Kansas City, and they do all the work and work tirelessly and have a passion for this organization and a passion for the passengers, and it's just been really fun to be involved with them and see all the good that we do.
Well, let's put up a website so that folks can log on and get some more information about Angel Flight Central. So that's it, angelflightcentral.org. There is a toll-free number there, 866-569-9464. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for what you do during the day, during the evening, but most importantly for what you're doing here. As I said earlier, this is stewardship at its finest, and bless you both.
Great. Well, thank you for having us.
You bet. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or email us at considerthis@tvmail.unomaha.edu.